Okay, working on the car here tonight. Pretty much what I want to get accomplished is taking care of this ugly coolant reservoir tank. That's an aftermarket one that I got cheap and I chopped all up and made ugly, crammed it in there. There's a bunch of wiring underneath it, so if it ever was to leak, it's going to get all over it. I want to get that out of there. I got these ugly expansion lines that run over to that tank. Plan is got this evil coolant reservoir expansion tank. Want to get it mounted probably somewhere like in there. Shorter length will get these ugly wires out of here, get the coolant away from the wiring harnesses over there, and then that also free up some space for a fuse panel I want to put in there in a little bit. So okay, got the first part of my bracket made up here, just some 1" by 1/8" flat stock. Looking to use this hole on the head and this one. Thinking if I get that mounted in there, something like that, can make another piece on the coolant tank, probably something similar. That'll go on the bottom and the side there, and I'll weld those two together, one hose clamp, and then it'll be tucked in there pretty easily. Like this vise, it's got these little notches where you can put the flat stock in nice. It holds it pretty square when you're cutting. Pretty much what I like to do is measure out the length I want, lob it off, put it back in the vise, and then I mark again where I want to bend it. Take the grinder, just kind of notch down like, I don't know, maybe 1/3 of the way through the thickness, and I can bend it on that point. It'll bend pretty square. Okay, got it marked at 3 inches right there with that line. Under down it. I went a little deep on that one, but it'll be alright. I weld them up afterwards so they're solid. Here's how I bend these things. I got them clamped in there right where I want it bent. Check it for closest square, and then just knock it over. Perfect. Okay, so I got these two pieces cut. I just kind of mocked them up. I think they're going to end up looking something like that when they're mounted in there. For anyone watching this thinking how ugly this is going to look or how fucking hack this is, you're not wrong. This is going to kind of look shitty. But I do want to give some advice if you're working on a project car. Don't let simple little brackets like this to relocate like some kind of tank or fixture like stop you from getting your stuff done. I got an example here. Just looking at this bay. Alternator, air filter, radiator, like you can't even really tell. That black circular thing, that's my power steering pump reservoir. That doesn't go there. I made the bracket for that as well. It's tucked back there. It's super ugly. It's got like 4 or 5 pieces all welded in. Ugly welds. Like the longer you look, the worse it gets. But my tank is relocated for the power steering, and I've had this bay open dozens of times. I don't think anyone's ever seen that, so it doesn't really matter. You know, get the stuff relocated, knock it out, and move on to the next thing. So this part's always fun, trying to find bolts that fit these holes on this head. I'm sure there's a good way to like do that. You can try to Google it, which I sometimes do, and I get mixed results, but I usually just look in my junk drawer until I find bolts that fit. Found these two. What are we thinking about the hex heads? I don't really love it, but for now I guess they're good. Something else I always kind of wonder that I don't really even know is like, how far in to a hole should a bolt go before you're like, okay, that's the right thread? Like, that one's in pretty good, and I put it all in by hand. I feel like if it went in that far by hand, like that's probably the right pitch, right? But it got kind of tight. I mean, I don't know. Is that enough to be like, that's the right thread? I'm going to send it. This is my buddy's M12 drill that I stole like 3 years ago, and I said I was going to give back. I never did. I probably drilled like 200 or 300 holes with this thing. He doesn't even know. 2 more down for the M12. Light work, baby. This part's fun too. You get to see how much you missed on measuring these holes. I'm thinking one of these is going to have to get a little bit bigger. Well, that one went in. That's a good sign. And that one is not going to go, I don't think. Oh. Yeah, no, that's not going to go. It's actually pretty damn close, but make it a little bit bigger and it'll actually fit, right? Oh, did I get it? Nope, gotta get bigger. Okay, I got my two bracket pieces tacked together. Basically what I did is I took the main one that bolts to the head here, bolted that on the head, and then I held the piece that's going to secure the tank up to it in the car, and I kind of eyeballed where I thought it should go. Sharpied a line on the back side, so you can see that. Right there's my Sharpie mark, and then I pretty much just freehand held it on, and then put that ugly tack on there. Let's go see how it fits. Okay, I got the tank mounted in there. It seems to fit pretty well. Clearance-wise, it's pretty tight, but it's not, you know, ridiculously tight to anything. It's getting close to the tensioner and water pump on that side. And then it's offset from the head pretty well on this side. Could go about an inch lower. I'm a little concerned about the hood closing because the oil cap already is pretty tight, but I think we'll be okay. It's only tacked right now, the bracket on the back, but feeling the tank, it's fairly stiff. I think that'll stiffen up enough with those extra welds. Got the hose clamp on. This bottom bracket that holds the tank seems to hold it in place fairly well. And that one hose clamp is going to be enough, I think. So I think the next plan is to get that out, weld it up solid, and then I got to round these lines. All right, I got this thing all welded up solid with some real ugly welds. Let's go put it on. Okay, the tank's mounted up. I'm happy with how solid that is. Feels like that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and get those lines made up. Pretty much how it goes. Have this one existing line that was on there before. That comes off the head on the driver's side. That's the steam vent port. Pretty much any coolant or steam that gets built up in that head gets pushed over through and to the overflow tank, which is what we just installed. That gets ported in on the bottom here. And then I also got to tie in this radiator vent. So I'm thinking probably something like one line that connects from there to here. And then I had my existing T from the old setup. I'll T into that connecting line and I'll run to the steam vent line. A little extra knowledge on these tanks, and something that I learned is they're pretty much just extra volume for the radiator. Some people even call them puke tanks. Basically, if the radiator exceeds the pressure on the cap, this one's rated at 15 psi. My understanding is that it'll puke that extra pressure out the vent port there on the side, and it needs somewhere to go, so it goes into these expansion tanks. Same deal with the head and the vent line over there. I actually just learned the cap on these puke tanks, that little hole there, that's a vent, and basically it will allow that vented side to be less pressure than the radiator, so that when it pukes coolant into the tank, it doesn't continue to build pressure in the radiator. It'll just vent atmosphere through this cap while catching the fluid. Okay, after some snipping and measuring, I got those lines pretty much plumbed in how I like them. I don't love this color orange, but I guess I can switch that out later. Got this vent line from the head zip tied here to the fuel line to kind of keep it in place. Shout out to David Freiberger from Roadkill. Taught me this with the zip ties. Pretty much go one around both and then one in the middle. Kind of makes a nice little holder. And then I got this line short enough to kind of pull this off the radiator so it's not actually touching anything. I might throw another one on this catch can to kind of hold it up into the side. I would have loved to get this line underneath the outlet or the inlet of the radiator, but it was kind of too sharp of an angle off of the nipple on the radiator. So for now I'm going to live with it. Probably switch those to black lines, and yeah, I'm going to call that done.